Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. In this one I am going to show you guys the easy way to install a monoblock cylinder onto an engine, and it involves using these. I've had a few people ask me in the comments section how to do this, and yesterday I watched a video of Jacob from the Jet Ski Brothers struggling with putting a 4-cylinder monoblock onto a 4-cycle jet ski engine. And yeah, I thought I would make this video because it's kind of hard to explain, but it's really easy to do. It works with any monoblock engine. You could do it with a 2-cylinder, 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder, inline 5, inline 6, whatever. It involves using different size tools or different pieces of wood. And so I can't give you any exact measurements, but I will explain this to the best of my ability. It's a good idea to use something like wood that is kind of clean. But I'd rather use wood than a metal material, because if any flakes of metal or anything fall into your crankcase, obviously not a good thing. If you have to do a bunch of these engines, or if you're a mechanic and you're watching this video and you're doing one of the same engine, it's actually a good idea. You could build yourself some out of like a Delrin or something like that, acetal, some sort of plastic material. My engine is just assembled for this demonstration. It's not fully cleaned. It's not prepared at all. So be aware of that. I'm not going to be talking about the assembly process up to this point. I've only installed these pistons and rings just to show you guys this trick. So with that in mind, let's get right to it. Okay, so now we have our 1100 triple cylinder and we want to put it onto the engine. Ordinarily, what you do is you try to hold this thing up and at the same time squeeze rings together and slide everything in place. And that makes it very difficult. Your arms get really tired, and especially if it's inside of the hull already, it makes it a real pain in the butt. So what you want to do is turn the crankshaft so that you have, on a 3-cylinder, probably a good idea to put the center piston. You want to start with it because it's going to be the hardest one. You aren't going to be able to access it from the either end. So start with the center piston all the way up. So pull the connecting rod all the way up. All right, so now you've got your engine all prepared for the cylinder to go on. You've got your base gasket in place. You've got your rings and pistons lubricated. You've got, you know, lube on your bearings and all that stuff. And what you do is you take some boards. I'm using them this size because that's what works for this particular engine. But for whatever engine you're using, you're going to have to come up with boards that are the right thickness, or shims that are the right thickness for your engine. So what you do is you grab the cylinder and you put the first one on. Ordinarily, this is the easy one. But in this case, it's probably going to be the hard one. So the problem is that I haven't actually gapped these rings yet. This engine is not ready at all to be assembled. Okay, so I got that in. And you guys can probably see where I'm going with this now. What you want to do is set the cylinder down on your little shims. This is giving me a harder time than it will give you because my rings aren't gapped properly, and so they're really tight in the bore. I shouldn't even really be doing this. But the piston doesn't want to slide up in because the rings are so tight. Okay, now that I have the center piston in place, a lot of you can probably see where this is going. I have the weight of the cylinder supported on the blocks of wood, so I no longer have to use both of my hands to support the weight of the cylinder and then try to use my fingers to squeeze the rings in. What I can do is choose either one of these pistons, and you can move these blocks around if they're in your way. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to move it to here because that works out better for me. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to rotate the crankshaft so that this piston comes up. And I've got to make sure that the skirt of the other piston doesn't catch, because that could happen. So I make sure that my rings are lined up, squeeze them together, and rotate my crankshaft. Again, this is harder for me because my rings are not gapped and so they're extremely tight. Okay, so now we have 2 of the piston rings. As you can see, that was quite easy. We have 2 of the pistons in with the rings in, and we can rotate the engine over so that these are just about even. Now what you need to do is measure the distance. You don't actually need to use a measuring tape. You can kind of eyeball it, but get your block so that it sits just below the ring line there. And then what you do is you take out these blocks and you substitute these ones. Doing things for the camera is always a little trickier than doing them in person. So keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to put this one here actually. Alright, so now these 2 pistons, the 2 that I already have installed, will slide down into place, as you can see. And now, it is quite easy to compress the rings on the last piston. Oh. This is going to be the trickiest one, the last one, because you have the least amount of room to do it. And if I were to do this again, I would actually choose this one as the last one because the flange for the magneto housing is actually getting in my way. Alright, make sure you gap your rings before you try to put them in, because if you don't have your rings gapped, this job is going to be miserable. Alright, my rings are now... Did I even have the camera pointed in the right direction? I've now got all the rings installed, and all I need to do is pull these blocks out and the cylinder will slide down into place. As you can see, my rings are so tight that they won't actually slide in. So I'm not going to force it into place because I don't want to damage anything. I'm actually going to pull mine back off. And that is the easy way to install a monoblock cylinder onto an engine. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.